Here's your serving of actual Justice Warrior content, my peeps. Today we'll look over the video of his Chicago bans police foot chases. It's basically about Chicago's new foot pursuit policy. The pretty big feature of Sean's video is the complete lack of context. However, unlike my other video about the teacher, the expanding of the context for this story makes it less interesting or less newsworthy. So it makes sense that most parties would minimize bringing up any level of real information to this story because that would make this story, well, a lot less clickable. Now, we can already tell from the get-go that Sean here hasn't done his due diligence because of the fact that he has only listed one source, it's 2 minutes long, and it's from Fox News. Breaking his video down, there are really two issues that Sean here has with Chicago's new foot pursuit policy, and that is the limited parameters that allow an officer to chase someone and the issue of paperwork along with the additional reviews. Let's start with the first one. Now, I want to cover that Sean does cover the 3 parameters that the news report lists.
Police under this are only allowed to chase people if they think the person committed a felony, is about to commit a felony, there was a serious traffic offense that puts people in danger, the person is in jeopardy, or domestic violence situation. Everything else, they're not allowed to give chase.
But I only bring this up because a little bit before this, Sean here disingenuously misrepresents those parameters.
They're going to tell you the very narrow constraints in which an officer can pursue a suspect on foot, but in reality, you already know that this is going to allow people to commit all manner of theft, and officers are going to be powerless to stop them, even if they're running away incredibly slowly because...
Now hold on, you might be saying. Sean is right. Theft isn't one of the parameters. Well, Sean gets the parameters wrong is because he's relying on an oversimplified source. But then again, what do you expect from a 2-minute news clip? Let's try to find a primary source. What everyone should be looking for is actual policy documents. And pulling up those documents, we find out the real parameters. Person being pursued has committed, is committing, or is about to commit a felony, a Class A misdemeanor, a traffic offense that endangers the physical safety of others, or the person being pursued is committing or is about to commit an arrestable offense that poses obvious physical threat to any person. More importantly of all of this is a Class A misdemeanors, as we're given a helpful explanation of what types of Class A misdemeanors are allowed to be pursued. Some examples of Class A misdemeanor offenses where foot pursuits are permitted include aggravated assault, battery, domestic battery, unlawful use of a weapon, criminal trespass to residence, theft, and retail theft. Class B and Class C criminal actions are very, very narrow situations. For example, under theft for Illinois, there are no Class C misdemeanors and only 3 Class B misdemeanors. And those are as follows: stealing property someone has lost that's under $500, damaging or tampering with a coin-operated machine to use it. Note that I said use it instead of intent to steal from it, because if you did intend to steal from a coin-operated machine, then it is a Class A misdemeanor. And finally, the last one is theft of a delivery container. Now stop. We all just pictured in our minds what we thought was a delivery container. We were all wrong, because the definition for it is actually way more narrow than you would think it would be. Delivery container means any bakery basket or wire or plastic used to transport or store bread or bakery products. Any dairy case of wire or plastic used to transport or store dairy products, and any dolly or cart of 2 or 4 wheels used to transport or store any bakery or dairy product. So now Chicago is going to be swamped with people stealing lost items, operating coin machines illegally, but not attempting to steal from them, and stealing dairy and bread containers. So Sean is wrong here, that this policy will cause all types of crime in Chicago to run rampant free of the law. Most types of theft will fall under a Class A misdemeanor. I recommend not using a single news clip to inform you. It's always best to find something a little bit more substantial in information. But then again, you would trade giving your viewers easy to swallow rage content for giving your audience a greater context of events and information. But that might make your story into a nothing story. However, furthermore, none of this should be any news, because if we go to the top of this foot pursuit policy, we find out that it's rescinding a 2021 version of this. That means there's another foot pursuit policy on the books, and the policy we just read hasn't even been implemented. A question should pop into everyone's minds: what are the parameters for the 2021 version? If we pull up that one, then we actually find out the parameters don't even change. Reasonably believes that the established reasonable articulable suspicion or probable cause is solely for a criminal offense less than a Class A misdemeanor. We even see the examples they give for acceptable and unacceptable Class A misdemeanor pursuits are exactly the same. A Class A misdemeanor is the highest misdemeanor you can have. The two parameters for each of the policies are basically the same. This shouldn't be an outrage story. It shouldn't even be a story. And yet we have Sean here throwing a hissy fit over it, though it can be quite understandable because Sean here has no idea what he's talking about. If we go to the second issue, we find an almost similar repeat of the first, though Sean's reasoning on its face is pretty ridiculous.
Footing that the person is engaging in a felony or is right on the cusp of committing a felony to even initiate a foot pursuit due to the fact that there's so much paperwork now being added to the officer for doing so, and you have 2 levels of review boards in order to discipline the officers for not chasing based on the narrow parameters the city of Chicago has let out. Obviously, this policy is going to be disastrous. Obviously, this policy...
Sean is once again being ridiculous because this policy really only adds one additional form for the officer to write and then another separate form for their lieutenant. And if Sean took the time to find these, he would figure out that each of these are one single page each. I'm going to repeat myself. An officer has to write one additional form, and that form is one piece of paper. Arguably, it's less than one, as you can tell by the amount of space used, but also for the fact that the second half is cut for the supervisor to review it. Now, we can say the lieutenant is the unlucky one in this case because they have to deal with one whole single piece of paper. Well, it depends on how much space they use for the comments, but nonetheless, one single piece of paper. Let's add them up now. We have two additional pieces of paperwork. That's definitely a lot. Coming to the issue of boards, there really isn't any additional ones added, and there isn't 2. This could just be a nitpick or a small slip up by Sean here, but the news clip actually never mentions any additional boards. They only mention 2 levels of supervision, which is accurate.
And when they do chase, it will be reviewed by 2 levels of supervision.
I only mention this possible nitpick because Sean would later go on to call it stations. But then again, I only bring up this entire thing because Sean uses the term boards more than once. But those 2 levels of supervision aren't something new. The supervisor, guess what that does, and a watch operations lieutenant, which does a whole host of things, but does review reports similar to foot pursuits, i.e. tactical reports. Now, I could go into Sean's statements mocking the idea of improving officer safety.
Oh, this is going to make everybody so much safer, and all this documentation, all this paperwork, we're going to use that to train the officers on what they can do better. Now, there's going to be a dramatic drop in foot pursuits, period, and that's the goal of this policy, that's the effect of this policy in a surge of crime, but think about all the safety and all the education we'll have for these new cadets who are essentially going to have their wings clipped.
But I think you guys already get the theme of this video. Sean here has no idea what he's talking about. He has done no research. He is mocking safety policies for officers of which he has no substantial idea of what they consist of. You know, I have to give Sean credit though. It is impressive to watch someone speak for over 10 minutes and spew nothing of real value the entire time. Anyways, peeps, we're going to wrap it up here. You know, like always, all my juicy sources are going to be down below, and thanks for watching.